Hello and welcome. I am here to rather informally walk you through what is one of the deeper forms of evaluation for Project Connect. And as you can see to start off, the St. Joseph School District Learner Profile is a very complex thing that gives a lot of credit to 21st century skills and skills that have always been important. We've always wanted students to know content. We still do today. We've always wanted students to be problem solvers and to be creative and innovative and so on. But there are things throughout the 21st century that are emerging in importance. Information literacy, when so much of the content that we get today is not in old static textbooks, but it's in very dynamic resources that come to us online and in other digital formats. Information literacy instantly becomes more important. And looking at job and life skills, again, those have always been important to us and should have been, but with a increasingly tighter global economy, cultural competence becomes even more important because we know today that even in St. Joseph, Missouri, in the center of the continent, many of the citizens of St. Joseph, Missouri actually collaborate globally at their job today. And that's just something that's probably not going to happen less frequently over time. So how do you evaluate something like this? It's pretty easy to evaluate. The answer to 2 plus 2 is 4. That's simple. But evaluating something as deep as this learner profile requires an evaluation scheme that's just as deep. And so we have termed the final piece of this the digital exhibition. And what this should look like to you is you should think along the way, if this feels like a portfolio a little bit, it probably should feel that way. If this feels like an exhibition or a presentation of sorts, it should feel like that as well. I think we're shooting for the best of both worlds from those two scenarios. So moving right along, the main tool, to be as specific as possible, that we're going to talk about here to facilitate this is SJSD Blogs. SJSD Blogs is an EduBlogs campus installation that we subscribe to in the district. It's built on WordPress and is an absolutely fantastic format for the kind of learning that we're looking for. So right now, this is a list that it really should look pretty familiar to teachers in the St. Joseph School District. If you're in Project Connect, you have students doing work in these areas. You have students that are creating documents, and sometimes they're doing that using apps. Sometimes they're doing that in the cloud using tools like Google Apps. Sometimes they're creating original video and they're putting it on YouTube and SchoolTube and places like that. Perhaps they have images on Flickr or any number of sites. And then increasingly, our iPad schools are doing work that happens within discrete apps on the iOS system. And so all of those things are really fantastic to be happening at one time because this allows teachers to use tools with students that best fit their content and best fit the learning objective that they're looking at the time. In our world, we call that TPAC, which is Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge. Cut to the chase there. When a teacher says, here's the piece of content that I need to address, they are going to sit back and select the best instructional strategy or pedagogy to get that across to students, research-based, knowing their students, and so on. And then the third thing they're going to do is they are going to select a toolkit to perform that. We have a toolkit today which is absolutely state-of-the-art, and teachers and students are utilizing a broad number of tools. So what this does, however, is it presents a little bit of a problem because students, instead of just doing work in a notebook, they're doing work in lots of different places. And so students would see the things they're doing here as tasks and projects. We, on the other hand, as educators, we know these things as the evidence and artifacts of learning. And so how do we help students and teachers manage those things and organize those things and so forth? Well, The way we're looking at that is because of the fact that we, like many other schools across the United States and the world, we are trying to move increasingly toward a personal learning environment for students, where we are as differentiated as possible and allow students to grow their weaknesses and to play upon their strengths as much as possible. In this big, broad area in the middle, school districts are filling that in with lots of different things. Sometimes they're filling that in with a tool where they submit things in a Dropbox, never to see the work again, and then we, as educators, manage that tool. We see that container here in the St. Joe School District as a place where students would collect their work, the artifacts of their learning as they go. They would select the best items ongoing, and as they do that, they would reflect on their learning, and that research points to as perhaps one of the key pieces of the puzzle to making learning really cement so that you can transfer your learning. This cylinder, this container, could be a lot of different things. That container is where SJSD Blogs fits in for us. We are repurposing that tool for the purpose of portfolio and a purpose of being able to share and interact and get multiple forms of feedback on our work. And so once we have done that work at grade 6, grade 8, and then right before students leave us at grade 12, at some point we need to have a big check, something a little bit more formal, something in a way where students can practice presentation skills, which have always been important throughout time. So how do we do these presentations? Well, I'm going to make the case that students need 3 e-portfolios. And if 3 sounds like a lot, stop and think about what we're doing already. For example, 1, students already have an assessment portfolio. We own that as a district. That is all of the assessment data and scores that go into the grade book, that go into PowerSchool, and we manage that. Students and teachers and parents have access to it, but really as teachers in the district, that is an assessment portfolio. It's for every student. We're already doing this currently. Where the digital exhibition fits in is here, and that's a place where we can present what the grades don't show. The real learning, the real experiential things that an A, a B, a C, or a D just don't show. Those really rich projects, those things that when you think back and you remember 7th grade and you remember 5th grade and you remember your sophomore year, you're remembering those rich projects that teachers led you through. And so it is this place where students will take what they've collected, they'll select those elements that show that they have proficiencies in that learning model. They will reflect upon those, and then they will make that presentation to a body. And then the third is that before they leave us, we have made attempts at doing things like CV, resume, preparing students for that to go out into the world. We know that increasingly post-secondary education is needed, but absolutely getting a step and getting a jump on the way their body of learning and the way their body of understanding and knowledge is at age 18 before going on to that next phase and leaving us is pretty crucial. And so the final piece would be to connect and share. And so more than just the people sitting in that room while that presentation is going, that presentation is going to happen and it will be over with. But we really feel like we should prepare students for the world that they're going to enter, and it is a world that they're currently entering right now. But in the future, there are networks, professional networks like LinkedIn, like Twitter, like Facebook. We have students currently who are using a lot of those things already, and we know that our students must ultimately show well in those places. Being taught responsible use throughout the way with some of the tools that we're using in school is a way to to assure that our students are showing their best face, putting their best foot forward in rather public social networks. These are things that are absolutely happening outside of school, and without some sort of attention to that and the real life aspects and ramifications of those networks, without some attention to that in schools, students are just forced to go it alone. And that's probably unfair considering how much professional networking has always impacted folks in the past and will increasingly into the future. We already know that there are colleges that are requiring students to friend their network on Facebook and job applications. Sure, people are looking at resumes and they're looking at cover letters, but people get Googled. People look at these networks, and we feel like we should have students who are really smart, who have competencies in all of those areas, and when they are 18, they are ready to take the next stage, whether it be work, whether it be professional studies, or what have you. We feel that this particular layout is a really deep evaluation and something different than what we've done in the past. So thank you. I invite your questions and feedback, and I invite many future discussions and questions as we work this model and hone it to being the best possible evaluation for our students and of Project Connect. Thank you.